Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have just an absolute horrific experience to share with you. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, folks, just brief real quick. I am going to be getting back in touch with Kirk Stokes. He reached out to me about a day or two ago, and he and I are going to connect, see what we can do. He's got one or two other Dogman/werewolf experiences that he wants to share. On this channel, werewolves do not transform. The difference between a dogman and a werewolf. Dogmen have a tail and have hocked legs. Are not as large as a Bigfoot. Werewolves are nearly the size of a Bigfoot. No tail, pointed ears, smaller snout. Now, I'm looking forward to chatting with Kirk and sharing all that information with you guys. Also, DJ got in touch with me. I've got to figure out a time to get in touch with him and get everything straightened out, and he's got some very interesting experiences that have gone on. But last and not least, the gentleman that is in Canada who filled me in about the Eye of Canada deep underground military base up there in this isolated island on the East Coast. He got in touch with me, and he wants to talk with me either tonight or tomorrow morning sometime. So we're going to figure all that out, but I just wanted to keep you guys in the loop. Let's get into this upload. All right, folks. So today's upload is centered around the southern part of Land Between the Lakes, which would be Stewart County, Tennessee. The gentleman that reached out to me was inspired because he had heard the experience that I shared about 2 months ago that came out of the Cherokee National Forest in Tennessee about the park rangers who had found that 6-year-old little girl, deceased 2-year-old brother and mom savagely attacked. Luckily, the brother, 2-year-old, and mom had made it. The 6-year-old did not, unfortunately. And the thing that caught him was when the wife reached out to me of this park ranger. She had talked about her husband being in the 7th Special Force group, and that really pushed this gentleman to want to reach out. So I've had his email. Like I said, I'm still trying to play catch up with my emails, and I have him in my star box. So I go through today's emails and I reach out to him. We start talking a little bit, and he said, that experience really inspired me to want to share. One, that I live still currently in the location or around the location that this happened, into that I was in the Special Forces as well. I was in the 5th Special Force Group stationed out of Fort Campbell. And during his time in that area, he fell in love with the area. He's not initially from that part of the country. He's more from out west, but he fell in love with just the rich forested areas of Tennessee and Kentucky region. You know, he just fell in love with the area. So he still lives there. He still hunts the LBL today. And he said this, I think it's funny that from all the people that talk about the LBL, there's only been about 4 or 5 people that I've ever heard mention the different hunting zones in the LBL. Nobody ever talks about that. I have. I believe he said that How to Hunt has, and a couple other, not Dogman or cryptid related, but he's heard a few other people talk about there's 16 different hunting zones. And where this actually occurred, this occurred in hunting area 15, which is smack dab Stewart County, Tennessee. And there's a rural route, Route 222, that is there. It's a very strange road. He had me Google map it while we were talking, and I was like, this is really weird, dude. Like, it's a Route 222, and it's just this tiny little road that goes kind of nowhere. And he said, yeah, exactly. So they had been the year's 1992. There was 2 16-year-old boys or teenage boys that had gone missing, and apparently a ranger had gone missing as well, looking for these 2 16-year-old boys. They were getting ready to deploy out to Somalia at this time, and for Operation Restore Hope and United Shield. They did end up deploying after this, so which was interesting too, because they dealt with this, and then 2 weeks later they're in Somalia, which total geographic difference, you know. They get a briefing from their captain stating that we have to go here. Apparently, there's a park ranger who is missing and 2 16-year-old boys. They both had not been seen for 4 or 5 days. The park ranger, 2. They felt this was very strange that they are getting called out to go to this area to look for a park ranger and 2 teenage boys. Why wouldn't more park rangers go out? Why wouldn't the state police go out? Why wouldn't the sheriffs go out? This came directly from the higher ups, apparently. And their second in command, who he's still good friends with to this day, was Special Forces warrant officer, said to him, you know, between you and I, during our debriefing, we heard that the park ranger is our main goal, to find him first, and then to possibly help find the young men. But for some reason, he is the mission. We are going to have live ammo, and we are told that we can fire if we feel like we are in danger. And he kind of wonders, like, what the hell are we in danger of? there's what's out there. And he had been told that just think Bigfoot, but more dangerous. And he kind of, really? Bigfoot? Was his exact reply to his second in command. And he said, no, more dangerous. I just said, think along that lines. This is 92. Nobody's talking about Dogman. The internet's not even a thing yet. It's just going into the unknown. They end up gearing up and heading out. They get to Route 222 and they get another briefing from the captain and the second and third in command. There's 12 Green Berets, and Operational Detachment Alpha is what they are called. And they are told, main objective, park ranger. After we find the park ranger, if we have time, we will help find those two young boys. If we are in danger, or anyone of our team is in danger, and you see an enemy or a combatant, whatever it is, you have permission to take it out. Take whatever it is out. It was almost like the captain didn't know. He got almost like a brief kind of explanation as well. And come to find out, he did. He didn't know what they were up against. He was told Bigfoot, but worse, from his higher ups. So they get to this Route 222 and they get out of their vehicles and start right immediately going a little more southeast into the woods. They are told that this park ranger, he had last checked in an area where there are some caves, like a cave system that doesn't go into a wall, but kind of sits on the ground, like a chunk of rock with kind of these caves that you would crawl into if you're going to go spelunking. Big enough for humans to go into as well. They get to the area and they, at this point, see that there is evidence of this park ranger being there. And they don't know if there's clear evidence of the boys being with him, but there is some boot tracks. It appears to be there had been a scuffle or something there because of the way the dirt is kicked around and such. A few of them go into a couple of these cave openings and look around to know anything. And they push on a little further. They follow kind of like what looks like a game trail to them. And of course, he is a hunter and he grew up hunting with his dad. So he's fairly secure with what, they're doing right now. They start to talk a little bit about the mission amongst themselves, a couple of them in the back, and the third in command is in the way back and kind of just says, no more talking. It's dead ass quiet here. And they think that he's telling us to shut up. So they do, but he says, no, do you agree? It's dead ass quiet here. And they realize at this point that the woods have gone completely silent. They can hear themselves walking, crunching of the leaves, crunching of the sticks, that on this game trail but there is no other kind of natural noise being produced. He then tells the guys in front of him, quietly tell the captain and the second in charge to stop for a second. Let's get our bearings. I want to see if they're aware that the woods are completely silent. There's something out here with us, and it is close. They stop, and they kind of stand in a diamond formation, keeping an eye on the area at all sides, while the three in command discuss what is the objective and where they are going to go from there. As these guys are talking and the other Green Beret are standing silently and keeping an eye out into the silent woods, they hear a kind of help, like a help me. Is anyone out there? I thought I just heard somebody a few minutes ago. Help, help, help. And they all look at their command, and they look to where the noise is coming from. They then are told, 6, stay right here, watch our ass. 6 will go ahead and try to locate this, if it is the park ranger or if it's the kids. Let's go. We'll push on. The 6 stay behind, with the 3rd in command being in charge of these other 5 soldiers, Green Beret. The other 6 have gone forward, and the sergeant is now talking. He's the one that said, hey, it's dead ass quiet. And he's like, wasn't that weird how I told everyone to, that it's quiet? We stop, and then we hear someone yelling. There wasn't too much noise at, how the hell did this guy even hear us that we were out here? And they hear gunshots up ahead where these other 6 had gone ahead. They get on the radio, we need assistance ASAP, get up here. We are not too far off from you. There's something in the trees. There's something in the trees, and it's not shooting at us. So they push on, and they get to the area. They immediately identify, hey, we are coming into, do not shoot, yada, yada, the protocol. And the first thing he sees and he remembers is, holy shit, there's the park ranger with our other 6 guys. All right, mission's done. The park rangers can go, but what the hell were these guys shooting at? And as he's thinking this, he is looking around like, as you're walking into a new area in the woods, you kind of look around to familiarize yourself with it. And he sees something kind of go from tree to tree, and not like a chimpanzee would or an orangutan, how it would hold the tree and kind of sway to. This thing jumped like 20 feet, 15 feet, hit the top of the tree, jumped, and it kept kind of going in this weird pattern. They then all immediately aim their rifles up and wait for the command to shoot. This thing starts heading more kind of northeast away from them, and they realize that everything has kind of picked up. Once this thing was out of visual sight, the sounds had kind of picked up a little bit, not to the extent where it was at when they first got out of their vehicles, but the sound was back. So they end up kind of not really interrogating the park ranger, but, you know, what the hell was that thing? Have you seen the boys, the teenagers? We were here sent to find you. If you've seen the teenage boys, you know, let us know. Where's your radio? Where's this? Where's that? You know, where's your pack? Because he's in a kind of, he looks beat up. He just ragged clothes, ragged hiking shorts, you know, the ranger hiking shorts are muddy, dirty. He doesn't have his button-up shirt. He's got a t-shirt that would be underneath his button-up that is ripped from probably running through the woods. He just looks, he's dirty, he's sweaty, but he doesn't have his pack, he doesn't have a firearm, and he doesn't have a radio. And, you know, so now they're like, what the hell was that? Where's your stuff? What's going on? Fill us in. We were told this. Our mission was to find you. Now help us move on and find these young men, or we're just going to go back and you guys can do it. The park ranger then starts to kind of spill the beans that he had gone out here to look for the young boys. And while he was out here, he had reached that cave section. He had sat down to get a drink from his canteen. And all of a sudden, something, as he's sitting on this kind of rock shelf, the cave is behind him. There's like 4 or 5 entrances at different vantage points. Something kind of grabs the back of his shirt and starts to pull him. And he's fighting with all his might, and the shirt rips. Not all the way off, it just rips. And he turns around and he sees what we know as a Dogman. The head is sticking out of the cave, and it's staring straight at him with these fiery red eyes. The park ranger said, that's not the one that I saw, though. The one that I saw was a whitish gray with these just hell-firing eyes. But that was dark brown, and definitely not the same one that took my, ripped my shirt. I ended up running. He had his firearm on his pack setting there because he had taken he left everything. And when he went back an hour or so later, his pack was gone. It was like this Dogman knew what everything was because he had taken his belt off and just sat. He was going to sit for a little bit. He had been out here hiking for a couple of hours. So he was, familiar with the area, not 100%, but he felt comfortable enough to take his, everything off. Now, as he's relaxing, but that shows intelligence that this thing either took it into the cave system or took it in whatever. To the gentleman that I spoke to, he said it sounds like whatever tried to get him and pull him in the cave system pulled his shit in instead when it realized that it couldn't get him. And so once they get that detail, they are all kind of like, well, is it a wolf? And one of the guys says, since when do wolves jump tree to tree? That was a goddamn werewolf. And it was the best explanation they could have. The word Dogman wasn't in use at that point. And as you guys know, per Victor, werewolves don't have tails. This thing did. But they're just going off of their, young minds anyway. These guys are in their early 20s. They decide that, all right, you want us to pull back, bring you back, or where do you think these kids are? How close do you think, and why were you out here away from these caves? Why didn't you just return back to where your vehicle is parked, which is way away from Route 222? And he says, because when I was running, he goes, I heard what sounded like, teenagers running and yelling, move, move, it's chasing us, it's chasing us. And I was yelling, stop, it's not this werewolf, it's me, it's park ranger, I'm here to help, yada, yada. Which had been a day previous. So now they make the decision, all right, they check in, this is what's going on, we've got the park ranger, we're going to go ahead and search a little bit further. If the ranger wants to go with us, he can. Otherwise, we're going to have two of our team members sit with him while he can rest or whatever. It's the decision's made that by the ranger, I don't want to sit here by myself or with two guys. I'd feel much safer with all 12 of you. And plus, you guys don't know these woods as good as I do. Okay, let's go. So they push on and they decide to kind of go straight instead of southwest or southeast or northeast. They're like, let's push straight. What is straight? They ask him. He thinks, okay, I believe there's a freshwater spring that's about a mile up the ways, Maybe if these kids were smart and they found that, they'd stay put there. And they start walking that way. And probably halfway between from where they were to this spring, they see movement off to the sides. And they're told to, if you fire, make sure it's whatever that thing was. Remember, these kids are supposed to be out this way. Do not shoot a civilian. And they see one of the guys says, civilian, screams it out. And the park ranger kind of yells one of the kids' names. And the kid yells back, is it safe? Or is that thing out there? What the hell is that? And the other kid, who is kind of off to the side of the other guy, the other, kid, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. We are, 5th Special Force Group out of Fort Campbell. This is Park Ranger, yada, yada. Come out if this is you. If it isn't you, still come out, because there is obviously danger. It's the two teenage boys. And they look like absolute hell. They're very, very dirty, bloody. One of them has claw marks, ripped, like his shirt was ripped, blood coming out of his back. Just in really bad shape, but not dead or dying, just really in bad shape. They had ended up telling the guys that when this thing comes back through, they have this little kind of cave thing that they hide into, and it wouldn't or couldn't fit in there. And while they were going into it, trying to avoid it, is when he had gotten gashed open. They start walking back towards the initial cave area, because once they hit that, they know they have about 2 miles till they hit Route 222 to where their vehicles are, and everything can be, they can get out of there. They get probably a half a mile before the cave system, and the silence comes again. This time they hear this just growl, this loud growl. Everyone's looking for it. Where is it? Look right, left, straight, behind, nothing. Growling straight behind. And they're looking, and they see off to the side, there's a quadruped, gray, white wolf, the size of a deer. If a deer would, be standing on all fours, staring at them. And even though it's daytime, they can see these eyes are bright red. Contact is made, and the soldiers start shooting. This thing starts to kind of lope towards them. Instead of running away from the shooting, it starts running at them. And as it's running, they realize we need to stop shooting, or otherwise, we're going to be shooting the ground because this thing's coming right at us. It then goes off to the side of them. And he said it was the strangest thing how this thing moved. He said it ran like a dog would run, but so much faster. And it was agile. Like it turned on a dime when it went around them. And as it started to go back towards the spring, it kind of shuffled, and they immediately started to shoot at it again as it's going by. They don't believe they hit one round. They don't believe and these are 12 highly trained war fighters. He said, I do not think one of us hit this son of a bitchin' thing. He said it was so fast and it was so agile. He said, how a football player looks when they're juking somebody out? This thing moved like that, but 10 times better with more efficiency. He said this thing was the ultimate hunter. They push on and get out towards Route 222. They load everyone up, and their meeting place is the Southern Welcome Zone, Welcome Center, to meet and kind of debrief, give the boys over, give the park ranger over, and such. They do, and then they go back to Fort Campbell, where they are quickly brought into a debriefing room, one by one, not all 12, not just individual. What did you see? What do you remember? Specifics. How big was it? Can you make out when it was going in the trees? Was there contact, made with one of these creatures? Did anybody get cut, touched, this, that? No. How can you explain the fact that none of you hit the one running away from you? It was whitish gray, a perfect perfectly visible moving target. How did none of you hit it? And come to find out, most of the guys, except the higher three, which nobody asked them in the team, all were asked the same questions. Same exact questions. There was no forms, no NDAs signed for some reason. Once again, he is still in great friendship with the second in command, the Special Force Warrant Officer. So he is second in command of this operational detachment Alpha. They actually live in the same community to this day. They are just lifelong friends after everything they've gone through. And yes, even the top three were asked identical questions. And no, they didn't sign any NDAs as well. So 2020 hits, and he and his second in command are out of the military, and they decide, let's go for a drive. Do you remember, exactly where we were? Yeah, I remember exactly. I'll never forget the coordinates, this, and that. Let's go see if we can, locate the landmarks that we saw that day. Let's see if we can, let's see if we can make contact with one of these things. Obviously, former Special Forces, they are equipped. He had his 44 and a 308. The other guy had a 308 as well. And they go out. They don't see any kind of dogman or clue of a dogman being out there while they're out there now, some 28 years later. But what they do find as they're going, they get to that spring, they pass the first cave system, they get to the spring, and they come back and they're starting to look around, and off to the side where that cave system was, the initial, they see another kind of rock outcropping with an opening, a cave opening right there. And they walk over to it and they realize that this is where the park ranger was sitting, not at this location, but he was sitting over here, well away from the first outcropping. He had run that way and booked it. That's why it was all kicked up right there. They ended up finding his backpack and his sidearm. They didn't turn it in, obviously, but they found his backpack and sidearm with his belt, and it was tucked and buried under debris. But when they were walking over to it and they were kicking around and just looking around, they clicked their light on into the cave to look in the cave, and one of them just happened to notice, holy shit, there's a backpack right there. And as they pulled the backpack out, the guy's belt and holster and firearm dropped right to it, right on the ground. Boop, there it is. They laughed at, and obviously it's 28 years of weather. The firearm is no good. It's probably shit by now. But it was just interesting that they did find that. And he brought that up. He said, Jeff, he said, I've heard you talk about why you go out to Tom Mezek's all the time. And that you talk about all you want to do is find a hat, find his checkered hat, find his walkie-talkie, find his rifle, find whatever. And he said, you keep going out there, and if you just make subtle changes in your hiking and walking and looking, he said, you may just find that hat, that rifle, that walkie-talkie of Tom Messick's. He said, nothing's impossible. And I was like, yeah, maybe. And we talked a little bit about the time that I caught the audio of the metallic noises and such. But yeah, just a very interesting kind of experience out of the LBL. He doesn't know, obviously. They don't know what happened to the kids. They don't know what happened to the park ranger, because 2 weeks later, they're at Operation Restore in Somalia. But just how freaking crazy is that? 2 weeks prior to being in hell on earth, a slum city area from deep in the Tennessee woods, getting stalked by Dogman. Nuts. And this is the experience that inspired him to share what him and his team went through. This is the story and the experience. Bear kills child at Chilliwack Mountain 17 years ago. Just a warning for those visiting the Smokies area to be careful around bear. Attack by a black bear leaves one dead. Black bear is in quotes too on that. 6-year-old killed, 2 others injured in Polk County, Chilliwack Mountain. 1 child was killed. 2 family members were hospitalized after a bear attack on a Thursday afternoon in Chilliwack Mountain, Polk County, Texas, according to the Cherokee National Forest spokeswoman, Nina Barrow. The attack occurred at around 4 p.m., according to Polk County dispatcher Gary Verner. 6-year-old girl was killed, and her 45-year-old mother and 2-year-old brother were mauled by a bear, according to Dan Hicks of the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency. They suffered a lot of puncture wounds, injuries consistent with a bear attack, Mr. Hicks said. The attack took place 1.5 miles from the Chilliwack campground. It was off the trail to Benton Falls, where some kids had seen a bear earlier. He said the boy was taken by Life Force helicopter to T.C. Thompson Children's Hospital, while the adult was taken to Erlanger Hospital by ambulance. The hospital officials on Thursday said both mother and son were in critical condition. About 50 to 60 people assisted the county's rescue squad with search for the little girl who had been missing earlier in the day. Cherokee National Forest Public Affairs Officer Terry McDonald said federal authorities were investigating the attack. They've closed the campground. They're getting everyone out, Mr. McDonald said. The search continued into the night of the Chilliwack, but Mr. Hicks said the bear had not been found at around 10:30 p.m. Chilliwack Recreation Area of the Cherokee National Forest has 68 campsites, numerous trails surrounding it. Bear attacks are rare in the area, but they do happen. May 2000, 50-year-old Cosby, Tennessee school teacher became the first person known to die by a bear attack in the history of the Great Smokies, according to a previously published report. That attack happened near Gatlinburg, Tennessee, where a Glenda Ann Brady was presumed to be taking a walk near the Little River, and she was attacked by 2 female black bear. One weighed 112 pounds, and the yearling weighed 40. Were found near the woman's body. The larger of the two was tagged for research purpose and was said by officials not to have shown any aggression before this fatal attack. All right, and this is the information from the subscriber that inspired the gentleman that just shared his experience. I've been a subscriber for several months now. I've been waiting for the right time to send this to you. This is the third time I've heard you talk about cover-ups in Tennessee, so I figured now is as good a time as any. Odds are nothing will change in the near future as far as the government coming clean. I will ask you not to reveal my name or any specifics of our lives. If you did, it would be very easy to figure out the source of this experience, and the NDAs were signed by these rangers and law enforcement officials involved in the case, and they are still enforceable. This was a requirement in order for these men to keep their jobs. You see, my husband and I were both born and raised in Polk County. We currently live in Banton. And then they explain to what Banton is. Yada yada, population 17,000. Banton brings in about 1,500. At the time of this, there was 11 forest rangers covering the area, 3, maybe 4 game wardens, and her husband was one of these, either 11 or 3 or 4. The attack obviously happened in Chiloe Mountain, aka Benton Mountain. My husband was working on that day, but not on that mountain. He was working elsewhere in the county, but was called to the location as soon as an attack was reported. He arrived on scene within a few minutes. Fouling was told to me by my husband. When he arrived on the scene, there was a lot of chaos. They were told a little boy and the mother had been attacked by something, and the little girl is still missing. They were told the attacker was a large black creature on its hind legs, so they immediately assumed black bear, although they were a rarity in the area, and for the most part, black bears don't attack humans, unless it's a female with cubs. Even then, the mama bear was more bolster and bluff than actual bite. My husband didn't see the little boy nor the mom. They were airlifted to Chattanooga. While my husband was at his truck getting ready to go, one of the veterinarian paramedics who worked search and rescue out of another county came over and told my husband that he had treated several bear attacks and over his lengthy career, and neither of these injuries nor the scene is consistent with any bear attack he had ever seen. He was speaking very low, looking around while he was talking to my husband, making sure no one was listening. He then saw, it was only then that my husband took notice of the people on the scene. He noticed there were several men and 2 women he had never seen before. He said he just assumed they might be upper tier TWRA officials or some associate with the sheriff's department. After he was ready to go and picked up with his paperwork, the camera and walked around toward the area of the attacks. After all, this was his job. He had to file the paperwork for the incident. As he continued toward the area, he noticed it was taped off. However, he recognized no one securing the scene. When one of the men on the outside of the tape noticed he was coming that way, he began walking toward my husband, holding up both hands. He told my husband, "Don't come any closer." My husband started to say something, and the guy said, "This is above your pay grade." When he asked what that meant, the man just told him, "Talk to your immediate supervisor," but he was not to come anywhere closer. So he turned around and went back to his truck. At this time, the Forest Service mainly communicated by radio because of cell phones. They didn't get a reception. He picked up his radio to get in touch with his supervisor, who's supposed to be at the area. At the time he was attempting to raise his supervisor, the supervisor called him to say, stay clear of the actual scene. He just couldn't figure out what they were trying to hide. It didn't take long for him to figure it out, though. Within the next 2 hours, some Suburbans arrived with 6 men in each. These men were wearing camouflage. They had weapons, but they were not military. Each local official was basically instructed to search with these men. It wasn't until these men arrived that they were permitted to begin searching, which lost a lot of time. They were told they could not begin searching until their backup arrived. All Forest Service personnel on site are armed with a sidearm. They also have a shotgun in their vehicles. My husband had a sidearm at all times and always had his Remington 870 in his work vehicle. The deputies were armed as well. My husband said all totaled there were 12 to 15 men on the scene, yet they made us wait because someone in the know did not feel it was enough manpower or firepower for one black bear. This is where it's interesting. This is where, once they began the search, contrary to what was reported by the news and articles, it took several hours to find the little girl. The news report said the bear was killed by rangers that same day. Others reports stated that it was the second bear which was killed and was responsible for the attack. As far as my husband was aware, no bear nor any sign of a bear was ever found in this area. After all, they found the child. He heard 2 rangers on the radio. Strange tracks had been found, but they were not consistent with bear. Some conflicting reports where the little girl was found 100 yards away from the original attack site. However, she was not found near that site. It took several hours to find her. Many reports stating that there were 50 to 60 to 80 volunteers searching. However, that is not the case. Like I said, there were 12 to 15 armed officers on the scene. Basically, that's it. I've shared this before, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But, they did find the little girl. She was torn apart. Her husband obviously saw conflict because he was in the 7th Special Forces. And he couldn't sleep for months after. She actually thought her husband, the husband that she knew that day of the attack when he got up that morning and left, was gone for good. But eventually he did come to terms with everything that he had seen, with the cover-ups, the lies, just the BS. These attacks are terrible. These attacks are a atrocity. But what's worse is the government covering it up. What's worse is the government using our resources to combat these things or hide them from us, but yet keep us in the dark. None of it makes sense. And there you have it, folks. Today's upload. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone's simply treated with the respect we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. And God bless.